Centre for Radio Jamaica in Kingston told LBC the latest.
We're getting reports of flooding in major towns, schools, of hospitals, of houses being damaged in southern and western Jamaica, in particular, roofs being blown off. The power company has told us 35% of customers island-wide were without power.
The Home Office says an Afghan national arrested over the stabbing to death of a 49-year-old man in West London entered the UK in a lorry in 2020. 2 others were injured in Uxbridge yesterday afternoon. Blasts have been heard in Gaza after Israel's Prime Minister ordered powerful airstrikes. Witnesses report explosions and tanks firing in Gaza City. A child's died in East London after reports of a chemical smell in flats in Newham. 3 other people went to hospital this afternoon. And Amazon's reducing its corporate workforce by 14,000 worldwide. They're stepping up the use of artificial intelligence. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 42 points at 96.96. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.13. LBC weather: rain and showers moving east across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Rain reaching Wales and central and southern England later. A low of 0. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8 on LBC. Welcome to Tuesday's Cross Question. We have 3 debutants on the programme tonight, but they'll learn the ropes quite quickly, I'm sure. We have with us to my left, Peter Swallow, Labour MP for Bracknell. To my right, Theresa Bischof, Head of Campaigns and Communications for the Good Growth Foundation think tank. And next to her, Connie Shaw, External Affairs Officer of the Free Speech Union. And to my left, Claire Coutinho, who's the Conservative Shadow Energy Security and Net Zero Secretary, and also Shadow Equalities Minister and MP for East Surrey. They're here to take your questions. The number to call, 0345 6060 973. And if you'd like to watch us, and why wouldn't you, you can do so on Global Player and the LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's start with a text question from Wesley in Gravesend. Are we just a Christian country on paper? Many people are angry with the possibility of the UK helping Jamaica rebuild. Where are our Christian principles which we're continually told about when discussing integration in communities? I think this stems from the phoning that we did in the last hour, where a couple of people phoned in saying, no, we shouldn't be helping Jamaica rebuild. I mean, it's possibly even a little bit early to talk about that, but clearly there are going to be scenes of utter devastation. And given that we were the colonial power in Jamaica, I was arguing that we had a responsibility to do that. But naturally, not everyone agrees. Claire, continue.
So yes, we are a Christian country. I think it's a really important thing to remember that, because so many of the things that flow come from that. That's why we're a pluralistic society. That's why we believe in forgiveness. You know, that's why we have a separation of church and state. Those are fundamentally Christian things. And we're a majority Christian country. In terms of Jamaica, I actually think lots of people are supportive of a country having aid for countries which are in crisis. I think that is a powerful thing that a country can do. I think where people push back on aid is where they feel that we're overspending when there are difficult problems at home, and also where the money is not being spent well. And I can talk from my experience as in government when I looked at some of the climate aid spending, and you think if you've got parts of your government spending which is, you know, helping Kazakhstan farmers to buy solar panels from China, well, that doesn't seem like a very good use of UK money when it comes to aid. So I do think making sure that you have something which is proportionate to what you can spend, and also helping people in crisis and doing genuinely good work, is important for people to have confidence.
OK, Peter Swallow.
It's interesting that Claire started off there with an example from her government poorly spending public money. I'm sure we'll hear more examples of that over the course of this show. Look, you know, there are lots of people in Jamaica who have roots in the UK, and there's lots of people in the UK with roots in Jamaica. They are part of the Commonwealth, and I think it is important that when they're facing this really significant crisis, we step up and we support them in whatever way we best can. And I think that's something that is going to be broadly welcomed across the country.
OK, Connie Shaw.
of course, we should be helping other countries, especially when it is a country like Jamaica, part of the Commonwealth, etc. They're going through such a horrific time right now. However, I agree with Claire, that's quite difficult for people to hear when the cost of living crisis is still so bad, when they're frustrated with the way that we're not dealing with issues here. People are fed up. Some people are fed up with sending money elsewhere. In terms of whether it's still a Christian country, I think largely perhaps we are just a Christian country on paper. I'm quite concerned about the decline in Christianity, and I say that as someone who grew up as a very avid atheist. I was very obsessed with New Atheism when I was younger, to the point where I was...
New Atheism?
Yes.
What on earth is that?
So New Atheism was the movement sort of headed by Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. The idea that you're not just an atheist but an anti-theist. You sort of hope that God doesn't exist. And I'm worried that the extent that secularisation has taken hold of this country means that we've left a massive void for other much more harmful things to fill it. And I'm relieved to see more young people going to church. And actually, I think that I would quite like to start going to church, despite the fact I don't believe in God. I think we need to be embracing our Christian values far more.
Well, I grew up as someone who's very Catholic, and one of the things I think is really interesting that Richard Dawkins, who you mentioned, who is one of the most famous atheists that we've got in the country, I would say, arguably one of the most famous worldwide, said, I'm actually very lucky to live in a culturally Christian country and I wouldn't want to change it. So I think, yes, fair points made by Connie.
Theresa.
Yeah, I think, broadly, I agree with what has been said. I think, obviously, the scenes that are possibly going to unfold in Jamaica are going to be devastating. Something I want to pick up on, which almost everybody on the panel has referenced, is the sense that when the economy isn't in the right place at home, you're much more unlikely to want to help those abroad. And I think that's a theme we're probably going to be returning to throughout this conversation. I do think that being a Christian country on paper, a lot of people feel like that's not enough. At the same time, many are having to balance that with concern for their own households. And I think that's the difficult tension there.
But in terms of the Christian thing, I think, seeing as you've raised that, Connie, I think it is an interesting avenue to go down. I rather agree with you. I don't believe in God, but I would describe myself as agnostic, just in case, hedging my bets. But don't the figures show that we are no longer a Christian country? That under 50% of people identify as Christian.
Yeah, exactly. But also the way that the census is done, when you ask, are you a Christian, lots of people will say they're Christian, but they don't go to church and they don't really celebrate religious festivals in the Christian tradition.
Do you have to go to church to be Christian?
Well, this is a question within itself, but the questions on the census are so broad that when you say you're a Christian, we don't really know what that means anymore, and that's sort of reflective of this whole conversation. What does it mean, whether we're a Christian country or not? Are we just a Christian country on paper, or are we a country that really does embrace Christian values? And so when we get those figures about less than half of people in the UK being Christians, I would say probably it's probably smaller. People who actually think about Christianity that much, it's probably smaller.
Claire, why do you think that successive governments haven't really been able to convince the British people that we should be an international aid superpower? Which is what Andrew Mitchell described.
I think there's two things. I think one, and again, I come from... I believe in compassionate conservatism. As you know, I worked at the Centre for Social Justice, which looked at poverty in the UK. And I think often when you look at some of the international aid spending, it's very bureaucratic. It goes through these big international organisations, and a fair amount of it is not well spent. You can go and look at the outcomes, the trillions of pounds we spent on aid, and the countries which we have not lifted out of poverty, whereas actually some of the approaches you're seeing by places like China, which are more commercial, which are building bridges and roads, have had a bigger impact. So I think looking at what the outcomes are versus what you're spending is one of the reasons that people have lost faith. And secondly, we are a country which has not had enough growth. And I think when people are looking at their future prospects and thinking of the big problems that we've got in this country, then yes, I think they feel less willing to sacrifice that government spending if they are then facing higher tax rises here. And those two things you have to acknowledge will mean that people want to spend less in aid. I think that is human nature. And so if you want to be a country that is very generous and has a strong international aid offer, you have to look at what are the outcomes you're getting for that money. And we have to focus on having growth and prosperity here.
Which Labour seems to agree with, Peter.
So the Labour government took the really difficult decision to reduce our international aid budget in order to increase spending on defence. And for me, that was all about reflecting on the importance of resilience in an increasingly fractious world. And when we're facing a very real threat from Russia and from others, It's important that we have a defence, that an armed forces that can.
But why should the
international
aid budget suffer? I mean, I find it incredible that I have Labour MP after Labour MP come on the programme arguing that it is right to cut the international aid budget. I mean, that would have been unthinkable a few years ago.
So this is the really important point. I think it's important to see international development and defence and diplomacy as really three sides of the same coin. So for me, when we are saying that now is the time to increase defence spending because of the global threats we are facing, that is a reflection that the threats that are coming down the track are frankly military in nature. Whereas, in the past, it has been more about global stability in terms of global poverty, some of those challenges. Those challenges remain, and I hope that we will get back to a time where we can increase aid spending to go back to addressing those.
So do you regret the Labour Party criticising the Conservatives for cutting international aid from 0.7 to 0.5% of GDP and then abolishing the department altogether and bringing it into the Foreign Office? Because you seem to be saying that was the right thing to do.
I'm saying that in the current circumstances this government is facing, the difficult decision had to be made. That is the job of government ultimately, to make those difficult calls. But look, I want to see a world where we go back to increased international development spending. I think it's really important that we play our part on the international stage and that we do stand by developing nations. But at the same time, I think when public finances are stretched, it's about prioritising where we need to most prioritise.
Right, let's go to break a little bit earlier and then we'll come back and talk about the new idea of the government to house asylum seekers in some army barracks in Inverness and Crowborough in East Sussex. It's 13 minutes past 8.
LBC.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Welcome on board this LNER service from London King's Cross to Edinburgh. My name's Paul, your train manager today, and hang on, is that a Scrabble tournament in coach here? Yes, G with an X is a word. Right, we're cruising at 125 miles per hour, same speed this lad next to me is typing. Someone's on a roll. The cafe bar's in coach G if you fancy a brew, or if you're mid-box set binge, just order through the QR code at your seat. We'll deliver it. So sit back and enjoy your journey. With LNER, it's freedom all the way.
Hello, I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:15 on LBC. We have Claire Coutinho from the Conservatives, Peter Swallow from Labour, Theresa Bischof from the Good Growth Foundation. What is the Good Growth Foundation? And I mean, is there any such thing as a bad growth foundation?
We get this question all of the time. The Good Growth Foundation, we're a think tank that basically looks at what the public actually needs to see in order to perceive economic growth as something that is good for them in their lives, not just something that is good for big business, good for those who are rich, but actually for ordinary people who want to get on in their lives, who feel devoid of opportunity at the minute. And we put forward the policy to make that happen.
And Connie Shaw is here from the Free Speech Union, which does what it says on the tin, I guess.
Yes, we're a mass membership, non-partisan organisation which defends the free speech rights of our members and campaigns more widely for free speech.
Have you been reading this book?
I haven't yet.
Woke is Dead, for those of you listening, not watching, by Piers Morgan.
Unfortunately, our cases would say the opposite.
Well, we're going to talk about that after 9 on the programme, because I think it's an interesting theory that woke is dead, but we've got Piers Morgan on the programme. Right, Paul in Horsham says, will putting asylum seekers in old army barracks instead of hotels really end the public anger about the entire issue? Now, ministers have confirmed plans to begin using former military sites rather than asylum hotels from next month. Reports claim sites in Crowborough in East Sussex and in Inverness in northern Scotland are going to be used. Peter Swallow.
So I completely understand the public anger on asylum hotels. They are not appropriate. They are costing a huge amount of money. It is a system that we inherited from the past government, and we're determined to tackle and address.
Why has it taken 15 months to change the policy? It's
important that we take these decisions carefully and after much consideration. You don't just use an army base willy-nilly. That is a serious decision to take, and it's right that ministers have taken the time to think the policy through. But we do need to see hotels closed. It's not an appropriate place for asylum seekers to be housed, and ultimately what we need to do is clear the backlog and get control of the illegal immigration system.
I gather there are 32,000 people in hotels at the moment. This will deal with 900 of them. What about the other 31,000?
As I say, we've got to get through those asylum cases that the previous government stopped hearing and clear that backlog.
They didn't stop hearing them, did they? That's an exaggeration. They might not have dealt with them quickly enough, but they didn't stop hearing them.
They stopped processing them.
They didn't stop. Well, I don't know why I'm speaking for you.
That's ridiculous. I mean, firstly, there are more people in asylum hotels than under us. But let me say this. Illegal immigration is a global crisis. We're not the only country struggling with it, and it's a really important issue to address. We did put that top and centre to say we wanted to stop the boats, and we didn't. It's one of the reasons we lost an election. So you cannot underestimate public anger on this. And my worry is, look, you can move people from the hotels to the barracks and you can move them then into the social housing system. The anger will remain the same, because what the public want is to have secure borders. What they want is for people who have come here illegally not to be here. And, credit to Kemi Badenoch, our leader. One of the first things that she's done in her time has to set out a much stronger border policy. I completely recognise that it would take a time for us to be trusted on again, particularly because I think there has been and is such public anger about this issue. But I think rather than making these sort of nonsense partisan political points, I think we should address the fact that people do not want people to come here illegally and stay, whether you put them in barracks or hotels or in social housing or wherever it might be. They want to have secure borders, so everybody who comes here illegally is detained and deported, not in months, but in days.
Claire is actually quite right about that last point. It is really important that the public see that we have control of the borders, that we are tackling the small boats crisis. It is more than just this policy. We have to look at the range of measures that this government is taking, from our returns agreement with France, which is meaning that we are deporting.
That's going well, isn't it?
We are deporting people back to France.
And then they're coming back.
It is not perfect, and it's a pilot, and I want to see it expanded and put into full effect. But we are doing other things as well, including our review of immigration laws, so we can make sure we've got the best tools at our disposal.
But the general public look at this and they think, well, there's actually more people coming across this year than last year. So it's not really possible to claim that whatever approach you're adopting, and I accept that there are all sorts of different initiatives, it's not possible to claim that that policy is working.
Yeah, look, the small boats crisis started 6 years ago, and it has been running ever since. Before then, we had lorries. We were hearing earlier about the really tragic attack from an asylum seeker and how he came to this country on a lorry. So it's not like illegal immigration has never affected this country before. It is not a new problem. But a serious grown-up approach to it does take time. And I completely hear the frustration from my voters, from voters across the country, that they want to see real action on this as quickly as possible. I can say I share their frustration. We have to get to grips with this as quickly as possible. But the way that we do that is with serious grown-up policies that start to tackle these solutions, and recognising that it will take time and it will take a range of measures for us to get control of the system.
Connie.
Well, on the army barracks point, my first thought when I heard it was, why have we just got army barracks lying around with no one in them? But I understand that obviously things change in the military, but it makes me think, there was that stat that the amount of people who've crossed over the channel in boats is now the same size or even bigger than our entire armed forces. So that was the first thought that came into my mind. But hopefully, and it hasn't been, maybe it has been, maybe I'm not aware, hopefully it'll be the case that they will actually be detained in these facilities, because the issue has been is that what people are scared about in places places like Epping is that these undocumented men from cultures are very different to ours, wandering about with nothing to do. So I think that's what would make people feel better about this if they felt that there was a secure level of security. It wasn't around schools and other sort of public areas and parks where children might be. So hopefully that will be the case, but I guess we just have to wait and see.
Theresa?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the original questions, whether it's really going to end public anger, I think the answer is simply no, right? If we zoom out a little bit, we have to also consider the things that are possibly beneath this anger. People are seeing other people get this sort of accommodation where they're maybe struggling to pay rent. They're looking at their own financial issues. And again, they don't feel like they have everything they need. Now, in terms of the actual solutions, it will have to be little by little, these small 1% steps, of which I think today hopefully is one. Likewise, with the one in, one out policy, we can't expect it to be solved in one swoop. And as Claire has said, this is an international issue that's being faced. We do have to acknowledge the public anger. Whether this will be enough to actually soothe it, I'm not sure.
And just to say, it is going to take much bigger policies than this. If you look at some of the things that we struggled with, it was the courts overturning deportations. So you are going to have to change law. And one of the things that we've said is we withdraw from the ECHR, which is a big step. But I think in order for people to feel safe and feel like their borders are secure, and all the benefits you get from a country which is high trust because people feel they're protected, people feel there is law and order, you are going to have to take much bigger steps than this.
How many people did the ECHR or the European Court prevent from being deported from this country?
So there were multiple cases, but one of the things that it did is it was...
There were 13 cases.
But still, that affects your judiciary, right? We have the Human Rights Act, we have courts which look to the ECHR and they look at those rulings, and that changes law here. And, some of those cases, for example, around family rights, were enormously instrumental.
But it
redefines what it means for people to be able to disapply a deportation. And that has had a huge impact, Ian, and you know that.
Is that Germany manages to do this and effectively, I don't know, ignore what the European Court says, but they certainly seem to get around it. So if Germany can, why can't we? Germany is sending plane loads of people back to Afghanistan. If Germany can do it, why can't we?
Ian, the answer is that we can, and that's because under the ECHR, there is a huge amount of discretion given to sovereign states to interpret their commitments under that agreement in accordance with their own domestic law. So the issue here is not whether we should leave the EHRC or not. It's what we should do to make sure that our immigration law is as robust as possible. And that's why the Home Secretary is carrying out her rapid review.
And I would say, actually, in terms of the Human Rights Act and the Supreme Court judgments, which they do look to the ECHR, it has a material impact. So even if the cases that actually go to the ECHR are small, the effect it has across our entire legal system is incredibly high. And you see that again and again when it comes to immigration tribunals.
Well, are we governed by a democratically elected government or by the judiciary?
Well, this is our point. Our point is we should take back control of our laws. That's why we are saying you need to have control over this issue. And by the way, I think if we can show that we can do this properly, if we can change the legislation and make sure that people who are illegally arriving in this country can be deported and detained, I think you should actually build a much better asylum system where actually you could actually bring over people in a much more serious way, which was actually focusing on people on need.
I was listening to a podcast this morning from the Irish Times. It's called Inside Politics. And their political editor, Pat Leahy, was saying about an article he'd read by the head of Stripe, the financial credit card company. And this guy was saying that in Ireland, the mistake that politicians have made is ceding control to quangos, to sort of non-governmental organisations over the last 20 years. And I was thinking, well, that's exactly what's happened in this country. And then he said, Mark Carney, one of his first acts as Prime Minister in Canada, was to pass a law saying that the Cabinet would overrule any decision that they didn't like that one of these quangos had made. And I was thinking, well, that's the way to get rid of bat tunnels. And I mean, I think it's got an application here, hasn't it? Where politicians, it doesn't matter whether it's Conservative, Labour, Reform, Green, Liberal, Democrat, whatever, surely it's time for politicians to actually take back control from bureaucrats and lawyers who are not acting in the interests of the country. End of rant. Theresa.
Yeah, I mean, I should also say, just back to the ECHR discussion, we did a whole research project around this earlier this year, and it's actually one of the things that matters the most to people, making sure that we do not seize over any control that we don't need to. And there are models where this dynamic is workable. So, for example, the Swiss have a model where, yes, the ECHR plays a role, but the ultimate decision-making lies with their courts. So, if we think about the fact that the European Union actually is a very important trading partner for us and one that we are keen to forge closer relationships with, we do have to think about how we don't entirely burn the bridge, right? And so figuring out ways that we can make it work, I think that's really important for this.
Well, the European Union has got absolutely zero to do with the European Convention on Human Rights, so I'm not sure that really stands up.
There is, firstly, in the public perception, there is certainly a link. And that's important, right? So we tested what are the 3 red lines for you, and that was one of the things that they're almost allergic to, right? And so there is a perception there, and there is a signaling as well that plays part, right? A soft power element that we have to consider.
But of course, the other really important element of the ECHR is that it protects everyone's rights, including, for example, to freedom of speech. That is a fundamental protected right under the Human Rights Act, which is the legislation in domestic
British law do those things.
Yeah, we do.
The idea that we can't have protections without British law, without sort of the ECHR, I think is just a nonsense argument.
The rest of the world does, I suppose. I mean, because the main argument against what you're proposing seems to be that, well, do we want to join Belarus and Russia as not members of it?
I mean, I just think it's ridiculous because there are so many countries around the world which have human rights systems which are not part of the ECHR. And by the way, you are now seeing more and more people who are not big Eurosceptics. We had David Wilson in our party do a review of the ECHR and what it was impacting on in this country. And whether it was veterans, whether it was illegal immigration, whether it was making sure that we could have benefits in this country go to British citizens, things that any government wants to make decisions on, it is, I think, just a fact that it is impeding our ability to be able to have control.
Claire, you mentioned veterans. Just this week, we unveiled a new memorial to LGBT plus veterans who systematically, over many years, were hounded for just being gay. And do you know how they managed to get the rights that protect them now from that discrimination? The Human Rights Act and the ECHR.
Well, look, I'm sorry, but you also have gay marriage, which is an improved right in this country, which was brought forward under a Conservative government. This idea that governments can't improve or change rights without the ECHR, I think, is fundamentally wrong.
But the ECHR
We've
is
seen
here to
millions
protect
of rights
when governments do wrong.
But you have
citizens.
other protections, and those protections are democracy. People can vote for parties who are then saying that they will change the law. So this idea you can only go to the ECHR is wrong, and that's why so many countries have systems without it.
Yeah, I agree with Claire. I do think it's a ridiculous argument, the idea that as soon as we leave the ECHR, suddenly no one's going to have any human rights in Britain. And we have a very strong culture of, the idea that gay rights is suddenly going to disappear once we leave the ECHR is ridiculous. And to be honest, the ECHR, the way that trans activists talk about it, they want to take the Supreme Court to the ECHR to overturn my rights and your rights as a gay man, Ian. So so as much as it's spoken about being protective of us, there's also this extra thing for women. You hear it from trans activists that they want to, they won't be able to, but they talk about wanting to overturn the Supreme Court ruling. So there's that concern as well. But like Claire was saying, the idea that suddenly we would have no rights, particularly freedom of speech in the UK. We're in the ECHR now, and under your government, we've lost quite a few of those rights, it feels like. So I don't think that is a very strong argument at all.
And on that note, a passionate note, we will go to the news on LBC at coming up to 8:30. We have the news headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Hurricane Melissa has made landfall in Jamaica, described as the storm of the century, extremely dangerous and life-threatening. Those sheltering from 150-mile-per-hour winds are told to stay away from windows, with wave surges and power cuts likely to cause significant damage. The Home Office has revealed an Afghan national arrested on suspicion of murder following a triple stabbing in West London was here legally. The 22-year-old was granted leave to remain in 2022, 2 years after arriving in the UK on a lorry. A child's died in hospital after a family complained of smelling chemicals in a flat in East London. Fire crews were called to a property in Newham and around 12 people were evacuated from surrounding properties as a precaution. LBC weather, rain and showers moving east across Northern Ireland and Scotland, rain reaching Wales and central and southern England later, a low of 0.
This is LBC.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees. like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working. Offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
At Laithwaite's, we go to great lengths to bring you great wine. We go far and wide. Searching high, and we mean really high, and low, and we mean stored deep underground in a cave low. Off the shelf, we don't go there. Off the beaten track, we certainly go there. And the best bit is, we even come to you. Order now at laithwaites.co.uk. Laithwaites. We stop at nothing to bring you great wine.
Angela Rippon, what are you doing here?
I've come to tell you about using energy flexibly, Albert.
Flexibly?
Yes, smart meter owners could get rewarded for moving their energy use, like doing the laundry at off-peak times.
So I don't need to do the splits?
No, Albert. Nobody wants to see that.
Get rewarded for using energy flexibly, only with a smart meter. Search Get a Smart Meter today.
Eligibility and availability vary. Consumer action required. Reward schemes and tariffs available to selected customers from selected suppliers.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:32 on LBC. Claire Coutinho is here, Conservative Shadow Energy and Net Zero Secretary, and Shadow Equalities Minister and MP for East Surrey. Peter Swallow is Labour MP for Bracknell. Theresa Bischof, Head of Campaigns and Communications for the Good Growth Foundation, and Connie Shaw, External Affairs Officer for the Free Speech Union. Next question from Caroline in Prestatyn. With the ceasefire in Gaza looking over after only 3 weeks, can we say that Trump failed? Now, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has organised strikes to be launched on the south of Gaza immediately after reports that Hamas opened fire on Israeli soldiers earlier today. Plus, there are accusations from the Israeli government that the terror group also breached the ceasefire deal's terms over the return of hostage remains. Connie, let's start with you on this one.
So the idea that Trump has failed is, I disagree with. I think what he did was amazing. And when you're dealing with a group like Hamas, I think it would have been very difficult to continue that success. Hamas has been provoking the IDF. I think they very much wanted the IDF to break the ceasefire. They have deliberately not returned the bodies of dead hostages. They were seen on camera reburying a hostage to try and make it seem like to the Red Cross that they discovered it again. So it's obviously awful that the fighting had continued going on, but when you're fighting against a group like Hamas that uses your own morality against you, Israel has been in a real life, the worst possible imaginable trolley situation where the two aims of the war, to get the hostages back and to destroy Hamas, arguably you can't do both because of the way that Hamas operates, by leaving all of their civilians above ground, saying very clearly that they're not allowed in the tunnels, but Hamas terrorists are, but you don't know where the hostages are. So when you're looking for Hamas, who are hiding in mosques, in hospitals, in hiding their ammunition in children's bedrooms, in people's homes, so it was almost impossible to try and get all of the hostages back without risking their lives, at the same time as defeating Hamas, at the same time as making sure that the civilian casualty is as low as possible. So Israel is in an impossible situation, and no doubt they will continue to be demonised after the ceasefire has now been broken by Hamas.
Theresa.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a devastating situation. It has been for some time now. Can we say that Trump has failed? I think he's made some important steps in the right direction. And of course, it was heartening to see that progress. Given tonight's news, I think, once again, the efforts have to be all about de-escalating and restraining any further escalation of this conflict. And of course, primarily getting humanitarian aid in where it needs to be.
Do you think Hamas is deliberately provoking the Israelis to encourage them to almost launch these attacks because they know that over the rest of the world, Israel will be vilified for it?
I mean, I wouldn't really feel comfortable saying that. I think it's a very, very complex situation. And as we've seen, the sort of peacemaking efforts have been vast and the focus on diplomacy is right. I think we have to do what we can to try and ensure that there is a lasting peace. I can't speak to their intentions.
Well, isn't it easy to speak for Hamas's intentions when they return an empty coffin with a little bit of human remains in the coffin? I mean, not a body, just a little bit of a human body. I mean, that surely shows the kind of people that they are.
It's really, really heartbreaking. People will have their opinions on either side of the debate. But as I say, the focus has to be on peace.
I think the issue, Ian, is that we do... Einat Wilf, who's an Israeli ex-politician and thinker, she has this term called West-splaining, that we try and sometimes ignore things that Hamas say, for example, other groups included, or try and explain for them. Hamas has been very clear on Lebanese TV that they would do October 7th 10,000 times if they could. Their ideology is a way that they don't care whether they live or die. They don't care if their civilians live or die. So the idea that we don't know their intentions is not true. They are very clear what they want to do, and that is to destroy Israel, to destroy the Jews in Israel, and to destroy Jews around the world. So the idea that we don't know what they're doing is frankly not true.
Peter.
This story broke just as I came on here, so you'll forgive me if I don't talk about the specifics, but what I can say is...
We know what the specifics are, that Israel has launched attacks on Gaza City in response to Hamas breaking the ceasefire. What
I really want to get across is how deeply tragic these events are. I think, I certainly hope and pray that we can get back to a ceasefire, that people can get back round the table, and we can get the long and difficult process of peace back on track, because frankly, if that ceasefire breaks, if the war continues, then the people who will lose out are Israelis and Gazans and the wider region, and that would be a desperate tragedy.
And any words about Hamas returning an empty coffin?
It's absolutely imperative that Hamas played no role in the future of Gaza. The government's been really clear on that. I am really clear on that. Hamas must have no role in the future of the Palestinian
Why did you
state.
recognise a Palestinian state without any conditions on Hamas?
So really importantly, alongside the recognition of a Palestinian state, we secured an agreement from across the Arab world that Hamas would play no part in a future Gazan state.
But you recognised it before that happened?
That was part of the process of our recognition, and that wouldn't have happened without our recognition. That is really vitally important. But that's the point about getting back around the table. That was so key in Trump's 20-point plan. Hamas cannot play a lasting role in the governance of a Palestinian state.
That peace plan was not constructed around a negotiating table, was it? It was imposed by the Americans.
The peace plan has, up until now, kept a very, very fragile peace. We have seen how fragile that is today. As I say, I do hope that with pressure from America, from allies across the region, and from UK and others as well, we can get it back on track. Okay. I know how difficult that is going to be.
Claire.
Well, I will just say this. I think it's impossible to say Trump has failed when you saw the pictures of those hostages being reunited with their families, and you think of the horror of what they've been through and the hopelessness. And I know sort of Kemi, our leader, had met with those families before, and the hopelessness that they felt that they would ever see their family members again. So for that alone, I think he has done a great thing for those families.
Right, let's move on to Rachel in Weymouth, who says, with both Labour and the Tories only 1% above the Greens in the latest poll, is the two-party system over? I think the Liberal Democrats are in the mix there as well. I think they're now on 15%. Now, YouGov's latest survey puts both Labour and the Conservatives on only 17%, with the Greens on 16%, Reform some 10 points ahead of both of the traditional major parties. Theresa, let's come to you first. We'll come to our party politicians last on this. It looks... but you can never say something's over permanently, but it looks as if sort of like six-party politics is here for quite some time to come.
Yeah, I think the message from voters is pretty clear here, that they need to see some change. I think from the sort of research, the focus grouping we do, I wouldn't say that voters are necessarily radical. Rather, I'd say they are restless for change. And it's something that hasn't come quickly enough, and it's something that they're simply no longer willing to vote for. Now, I think for the government in particular, what's important when looking at these figures is they have to realize that it's now on them to reunite the progressive side of politics. I don't think that the right move is to now try and chase reform votes. I don't think you can.
That's what Keir Starmer's doing, isn't he?
I mean, I don't think that's what he is.
Or maybe trying to prevent more Labour people from going to reform.
I mean, absolutely. There are policies, though, that can meet both the objectives of avoiding sort of a drain on the left as well as on the right. And that's kind of the sort of stuff we put forward. For example, we recently put out a work and teach visa that not only decreases serious concern about immigration by 18 points, but brings together Labour left switchers and Labour reform switchers. So kind of bringing those two together, it's possible. You don't have to try and run in one direction, thereby possibly alienating the other side entirely. I think it's exactly that challenge that the government now has to meet.
Connie?
I think it's quite hard to tell because obviously all of the polls say that if there was a general election tomorrow, many of the polls say if there's a general election tomorrow, Nigel Farage is going to be our Prime Minister. But if there was actually a general election tomorrow, how would people vote? And that is obviously, we'll never know whether what would happen in that case. But I think it's almost been like a domino effect. As soon as reform came on the scene, suddenly the Green Party thought, oh God, we've got to get going here, especially then when they saw your party coming up. And so now we have, the Lib Dems feel almost irrelevant, although this is idea that maybe perhaps they could be the official opposition in some circumstances. So it's hard to tell, although I feel it's quite a daunting time because if everything is so uncertain, and that's obviously not helping to the absolute turmoil we're in as a country, culturally, economically, and just as a general society. So it is quite a daunting time. And because of the uncertainty, it's very difficult to tell. I'm quite sad to see the uni party disappearing. I was always a very strong defender of first past the post and the two-party system in A-level politics. I think that it's the only way that we can sort of get things done, as much as maybe it's not the most democratic way we could go about it. But I think in terms of having a stable democracy, it does concern me that we're seeing not tiny parties. Obviously, the Green Party is doing very well at the moment, but seeing smaller parties just pop up out of nowhere does worry me for that stability.
Well, if we enter a period of 5 or 6 party politics where all the parties are roughly the same, I mean, obviously reform at the moment is way out in front, but it's going to make the business of opinion polling almost it's going to be impossible to predict an election result, because you could have, if all the parties sort of have roughly the same share of the vote, there'll be some very weird results that come up, I suspect. Claire?
Well, look, I think a lot of it reflects that people have just lost faith in politics. And I think, when people interact with the state, they often now find it big and remote and dysfunctional, and they don't understand why people can't fix some of the problems that we're facing. I think we all need to be honest about that. Now, if you look at the people who've benefited from that, you have the Green Party, who said they want to dismantle all nuclear power in this country and, get rid of landlords and just tax the billionaires and everything will be fine. I mean, that's seriously not going to fix any of the problems. You've got Reform, who currently do not have an economic plan at all, saying that they were going to spend £200 billion from who knows where at the last election. So I think the thing that I worry about is at the moment people are sort of in a real sense of outrage that things aren't working and they want things to be better. And actually what we all need to do as political parties, I know we are doing it, is work to be those credible options for them so that they have something to look at the next election. I personally believe with the Conservatives that people want a party which is strong in the economy and strong on borders. And one of the things that I've worked very hard on is to make sure that we've got a credible energy policy, which we have worked out that we could cut people's electricity bills by 20% now. I think one of the things that people worry about the most at the moment is their energy bills and why they're so high. And
okay, I mean, you're slightly going off the subject here, but do you accept that the two-party system is effectively over for the foreseeable future?
Look, I don't think we know what any of this means yet. I think what it means is that people are really, feeling a lack of faith in politics. And until we get closer to an election and we can really see, like I say, you've got the two parties at the moment which have been the main beneficiary. They don't really have credible policies. And I think that's the kind of thing people look at closer to an election. But I'm just conscious that one of the things I think people care about deeply is the economy. And like I said, I think one of the things that's really important for us as a party is making sure that we're credible on that and we can give people that sense that growth can be available to them, and that, whether it's the high energy costs they face or the other challenges that they've got a party that will be pro-jobs, pro-growth, pro-them, pro-the consumer.
Morgan says, is it really fair to bash the Green Party or Reform without allowing them to defend themselves? Life's so unfair, isn't it? Peter?
Look, I represent a seat that has never been Labour before, and I have a majority of fewer than 1,000 votes. So if you want to ask me, do I believe that we are living in a very unique time in British politics, I would say the answer is yes. The way that I think that I need to go about my job as a local MP is to be as powerful a champion for my constituents in Bracknell as possible, and to advocate for all of the things that will make their lives better. It is great that we've got an economy that's the fastest growing in the G7, that we've seen inflation rates cut, but I know that that's not being felt by enough people in my constituency yet.
But you know that you were elected in 2024. No MP has a personal vote of more than, say, 1,500, 2,000 votes, which you build up over a period of time. I mean, you must be sort of almost beside yourself with the performance of the government so far, because people aren't feeling any better off. They don't see much change in their public services. And do you not think that there is a huge responsibility on this government to succeed? Because if you don't succeed, we know what the next stage is.
Absolutely. I'm laser focused on getting the delivery that will make a real impact in people's lives, the change that they can feel in their pockets. That is the job of this Labour government. It does take time. I was really clear with people before the general election that change would take time, but we do have to be able to demonstrate to people the real and lasting benefits a Labour government has brought. And sorry to disappoint the last contributor, but we also have to do highlight what a Reform government would genuinely mean. Just today, we've seen a Reform county councillor request that the government give them permission on Warwickshire County Council to have children as young as 8 walk 5 miles to school in the bitter cold because they want to balance the books on children. That is what Reform in Power means.
To be fair to Reform, I'm not sure they would have quite put it like that, but I haven't seen this proposal, so I'll have to accept what you're saying.
The proposal.
Okay.
They want to be allowed to.
I'm not sure that's a vote winner.
Well, indeed.
Right, we'll come to more of your calls in a moment, and of course our famed fun question at the end, which I'm about to tell our panel what that is, so they can prepare their hilarious answers. It's 8:48.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
On the orders of Donald Trump, 4 more boats have been struck off the coast of Venezuela, 14 more people dead. It's apparently about a war on drugs. Or is Donald Trump trying to overthrow the president of Venezuela itself?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
I always thought it should be me looking after Mum in her golden years. After all she's done for me, I wanted to be the one to support her. But I couldn't be with her all the time, so I contacted Home instead. After their first visit, Mum was over the moon, telling me all about the laughs they'd shared over a cup of tea. And that's when I realised it didn't need to be me looking after Mum, just someone who cares for her like I do. Find out more about award-winning personalised home care at homeinstead.co.uk.
Hello, I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be, with headspace to focus on more important matters, like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Imagine the very focal lens of the future, personalised to you, engineered with artificial intelligence and powered by your visual behaviour. Experience instantly sharp vision in motion with Varilux XR Pro lenses from Essilor. Find your local optician at essilor.com and ask for Varilux XR Pro.
ITV presents.
Oh my God.
Gas! There is a chemical weapon in the cab.
We are dealing with a serial killer.
The devices are designed to kill, but first he wants to suffocate them. I'm spent.
I can't watch you. You give everything until you've got nothing left. I take risks. That's my job. Lana!
Hold your breath. Trigger Point. Available now on ITVX.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
10 to 9 on LBC. Claire Coutinho, Peter Swallow, Theresa Bischof and Connie Shaw with us answering your questions. Daisy in Northampton says, what good is there in abandoning the Climate Change Act and ending support for clean energy just to chase votes from reform, as the Conservatives have done? It doesn't make sense to me when we need to be bringing down bills and ending our reliance on fossil fuels. That's one for you, Claire.
Well, firstly, this is a continuation of some of the things I said in government. As you remember, when I came in, I did a net zero reset and I said we've got to worry about cost to consumers. And what you're seeing at the moment is the clean energy path that Ed Miliband is signing us up to. There is no way it can bring down bills. He's signing up to prices much higher than the current cost of electricity, and he's locking us into contracts for 20 years. Now, people are
Why would he do that if it's such a bad idea?
I don't know why he would do that. I'm telling him not to do that. I think it's a terrible idea. And you can see from the numbers, and energy bosses just last week in Parliament said, even if gas was zero, bills are going up under Ed Miliband because of all of these extra costs he's putting onto people's bills. Now, my view is that you cannot win a climate change race at the cost to consumers. If you're making your people poorer, if you are losing jobs, if you are raising people's bills, no one around the world is going to follow your lead. So we've done, by the way, more than most other countries. We've halved our emissions. But what we need to do now is focus on getting cheaper electricity. We have some of the highest prices in the world. And by the way, just on this decarbonisation point, if you massively bring down the price of electricity, you would have a much easier job at convincing people to buy electric vehicles and use electric home heating. And actually, even though, I've been saying this for months, this week, the Tony Blair Institute has come out with a report which is saying incredibly similar things, that we need to focus on cheap power, and the most important thing is to make sure that we look after the consumers.
So the Tony Blair Institute has said that. What's the Good Growth Foundation said about it?
Yeah, so I think this element of making sure that bills are brought down, it's absolutely key for the people that we poll, the people that we speak to in focus groups, etc. And understandably, there is this reluctance.
You do an awful lot of focus grouping and polling. I mean, how does that help growth?
How does that help growth? Oh my God, we want the kind of growth that's popular, the kind of growth that people actually can experience in their lives. So we have to ask them the questions about how they actually would perceive change in their pockets. That's kind of a big part of what we're doing. But surely the role of a
think tank is to lead public opinion, not follow it.
Oh yeah, of course. I can talk to you at length about all of our policy recommendations
no, let's not.
too. I already told you a little bit about our work in Teach Visa, right? The kinds of policies that can soften public anger about things like immigration, but also have a positive impact on the economy and help the government bring together their voting coalition. But back onto this green energy question. So yeah, I mean, the sort of hesitant nature of some voters towards this, because they fear it's going to actually heighten energy bills, it is understandable and is something that is to be avoided. At the same time, especially given the current geopolitical tension, we have to make sure that we build up our own energy resilience too.
So if I told you we could cut electricity bills tomorrow by 20% and still have some of the cleanest electricity in the world, do you think that would be good growth in your view?
I imagine that a lot of voters will think so, yeah.
Connie?
The energy question is way beyond my remit, but from my perception in terms of the sort of the political sphere that I come from, when you ask Claire, why is Ed Miliband doing this if it's such a terrible idea? I think the perception to a lot of people is that ideology of clean energy is being put before pragmatism, and I think that for a lot of people angers them. I have no idea. It's not something that I really know about which, what would be the correct path, but I know that I'm very familiar with that perception that it's ideology that's put in front of people.
Peter?
The investments that we're seeing in the green economy are creating jobs, thousands of jobs across the country. It's helping us to produce that cheaper electricity that Claire talked about, because it is just a simple fact that producing energy through renewable energy now is cheaper than it is to use fossil fuels. And it is absolutely helping us be more secure. It's getting Putin's foot off our necks. It's making sure that we are a self-reliant nation that is producing our own energy. Why would you end oil and gas production in the North Sea then? Or we're not ending it.
No, not ending production now, but that's the aim.
You've got to ban on new licences.
This is the vitally important point. It's about a just transition. We are seeing globally the way that we produce energy change, and that means that we are having to adapt as a country. It's about taking the opportunities that brings to grow our green economy, create these new jobs, but also vitally, very, very importantly, support workers in those industries to transition across into this new world.
We've just got time to squeeze in one more question. It's from Fortune in West Hampstead. Cameroon has re-elected its 92-year-old president for a 7-year term, while Ivory Coast has given its 83-year-old leader another 5-year term. Plus, there's Donald Trump now talking about wanting a third term as president when he'll be 82 when this one ends. Within our own political system, should we have age limits for serving in public roles? Any guesses as to how old Britain's oldest MP is?
No, I have no idea.
One of your colleagues.
It's one of mine, isn't it? It's Edward Lee, isn't it?
No,
21.
No, it's Sir Roger Gale, 82.
So sorry, Edward.
And some members of the House of Lords are in their 90s. Right, 30 seconds each on this. Connie?
I do understand, and obviously then when you get cases like Joe Biden, you think, God, why are we allowing members so old? But then you have people like Trump who on the international stage, whatever you think about him, does and tend to do quite a good job, whether you like his style or not. And he is an elderly gentleman, I guess. So it's hard because relatively you might have a really great person who's older and you have a much younger person who isn't. So I'd be reluctant to put a cap on it. But when you get the really old cases, you do think maybe this is a bit ridiculous.
Peter?
I think it was really great that at the last election we elected a wider range of MPs in terms of age, including a lot of younger MPs. I just about count myself as one of them, but I think that experience has its place as well. So let's have a range.
Because it was interesting. Now I've forgotten his name. Peter, MP for Bury St Edmunds, former
Priestley.
Pete Priestley, that's the one. Who, I mean, he's been on this programme before, and I've seen him on various others, and I think he's really refreshing that he's got elected at the age of 67. Gives me hope. Claire,
there's still time, Ian. There's still time.
Really Claire.
I think you should judge people on outcomes and what they actually do, not the other things.
Theresa?
I mean, I think there's a number of problems with Trump considering a third term beyond his age.
Like the Constitution.
Small detail. I mean, I think this is a very tough question. Like we've kind of heard, there are, some cases where people even of an older age do a really, really good job and others that haven't. I would be minded to just maybe the solution is more rigid health checks. I know we saw with Joe Biden, we didn't really find out what we needed to know in time. But I don't necessarily think that age should disqualify you, especially given there are so many brilliant statesmen and stateswomen.
And can I just say a final point here, that across our society, across Bracknell and across the country, there are many older people who give so much time to their communities, volunteering or just helping out with grandkids, who do so much to help this country. So I just wanted to say that as well, because I think often, when this conversation comes up, I can only imagine how infuriating it must be for people like that.
Andrew at Norbury has our fun question. With Jeremy Corbyn starring as the Wizard of Oslington, get it? In a panto production in the next few weeks. Yes, that is really happening, apparently. When someone told me this earlier today, I just wouldn't believe them. Which famous person would you most like to perform alongside on the panto stage? Theresa?
So I know there's a Traitors UK season on, but Traitors US, Alan Cumming, he is brilliant. And I know he would put on a fabulous show, and I think would be a very dynamic duo.
Connie?
Prunella Scales.
Bit late for that, I'm afraid.
I know, but R.I.P.
Indeed. Yeah. Peter?
Ian, you and I would make a great pair of panto dames.
I'm not sure how to take that. Claire.
I'm going to take the punishment.
How very dare you?
I'm going to take the punishment. I'm going to say Ed Miliband, not because I would enjoy it, because he would finally get to answer some of my questions.
Oh,
and I'd do that for the country.
Oh, yes, she would.
Right, thank you all very much for coming on the programme tonight. On tomorrow's panel, we have Chris Murray from Labour, Greg Smith from the Conservatives, the writer and comedian Timandra Harkness, and LBC's own political correspondent Aggie Chambray. So do tune in for that at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Coming up in the next hour, we are going to be talking about this book. It's called Woke is Dead: How Common Sense Triumphed in an Age of Total Madness. It's by Piers Morgan. I spent just over half an hour with Piers a couple of days ago asking him about the book. We're going to play you part of that interview. The whole of it will be on my All Talk podcast tomorrow. But he's got some very interesting views on wokeness. It's a much more interesting and better book than possibly I imagined it would be. I really enjoyed it. I wonder what you're going to make of the interview that we're about to hear. Do you think woke is dead? Is it twitching? Or is it still in full throttle? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at